After we tied the knot for the second time, I stopped asking questions about Ross's life. If he took his childhood sweetheart on a trip, I didn't throw a jealous fit. If he stayed out until dawn, I didn't blow up his phone. Even when I found his little friend's silicone bra petals discarded in our bathroom, I simply packed them into a neat little gift bag and reminded him to take them back to her. Ross furrowed his brow, his voice edged with frustration. Are you quite done throwing a tantrum? I looked up at his flushed, angry face, genuinely confused about what had set him off this time. Ross looked away, rubbing his temples with an exhausted sigh. Sophie got blackout drunk at the corporate dinner last night. She lives alone, so I had no choice but to bring her here to sober up. She took a shower this morning and ordered fresh lingerie through a courier. She just forgot the petals by accident. He gave me that same helplessly exasperated look I had seen 1,000 times before our divorce. I've told you over and over again. We grew up next door to each other, and now she works for my firm. Her mother begged me to look out for her. Can you please stop being so petty? I calmly pressed the little paper bag into his chest. I'm not mad. I just wanted you to return her things. Besides, I flashed a sweet smile. I promised I would trust you unconditionally from now on, didn't I? It was like punching a cloud. A flicker of absolute shock crossed Ross's face. He stared at me intently, searching my eyes for any trace of sarcasm or hidden rage. You mean that? I offered a perfect, polite smile and broke eye contact. Of course. After all, you already showed me exactly what it costs to doubt you. Hearing my answer, the tension drained from Ross's shoulders. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, burying his face in the crook of my neck, his voice turning incredibly soft and affectionate. Fiona, since you came back to me, you've been so wonderfully well-behaved. Come to the company gala with me tonight, please? I brushed him off effortlessly. I think I'll pass. You always hated mixing business with your private life. I'd only get in the way. Before I could finish, the arm around my waist tightened like a vice. Ross's voice was perfectly level, stripped of all emotion. But my instincts instantly picked up on his displeasure. You used to cling to me everywhere I went. You used to say you had to supervise me to make sure no other women got too close. I let out a soft laugh, turning around to cup his face. Like you said, that was the old me. I trust you now. There's no need to play the jealous wife. His expression darkened instantly. He opened his mouth to say something else, but I ignored his shifting mood and leaned in, my tone dripping with honey. Plus, a friend already asked me to go shopping and catch a movie tonight. I can't cancel on him now. Honey, could you wire $1 million to my account? Ross didn't say a word. He just stared at me, his eyes swirling with dark, complicated emotions. After a long moment, a humorless chuckle escaped his lips. Fine. He was about to say something else, but the electronic lock on the front door suddenly beeped and clicked open. Sophie strutted into the foyer wearing a skirt so short it bordered on scandalous. Her face morphed into a mask of exaggerated surprise. Oh, Fiona, you're back. Since you and Ross just signed the remarriage papers, I totally didn't expect you to move back in so fast. Ross glared at her, dropping his hands from my waist, barging in here without knocking. Do you need something? Sophie immediately bounced over to him, grabbing his arm with a sickly sweet pout. The gala is tonight and I still haven't picked out my dress. Come with me to the VIP boutique to help me choose. Please. Ross didn't answer her. Instead, his gaze locked entirely on me, waiting for my reaction. I simply picked up my designer bag from the sofa and strolled casually toward the door. My friend is texting me to hurry up. I'll leave you two alone. I hate playing the third wheel. With my hand on the doorknob, I paused and popped my head back inside. Oh right. Honey. A smug, knowing smirk flickered across Ross' face. He looked like a man who had finally proven his point. But then I beamed at him and delivered the punchline. Don't forget to wire that $1 million. Have fun. I pulled the heavy oak door shut behind me with a solid thud, not sticking around to hear his reply. The world outside was perfectly quiet. As I walked down the manicured stone path through the front gardens, the bright smile melted off my face, replaced by a mask of frozen apathy. Sitting in a dimly lit restaurant that evening, I refreshed my Instagram feed, and saw a new post from Sophie. It was a candid shot taken inside an exclusive boutique. Ross was sitting on a velvet sofa in the background, his eyes practically glued to her exposed bare back. I double-tapped the photo to leave a like. Less than 5 minutes later, the post was deleted. A text from Ross popped up on my screen. "Are you done with your date? Are you home yet?" I stared at the words, letting the silence stretch out. Ross and I had been together for 8 years. We fell in love naturally, but the massive gap in our social standing always left me feeling insecure. He was old money, and I was just an aspiring artist. That crippling inferiority complex reached its absolute peak the day Sophie entered the picture. At first, I actually bought Ross's excuses. I truly believed she was just a naive, sheltered girl from his childhood country club circle, who needed help navigating the real world. But that supposedly innocent girl managed to make Ross, a man who worshipped his work, break his own professional rules time and time again. He even reassigned the executive assistant he had relied on for 8 years just to keep Sophie close to him in the office, despite her having zero administrative experience. It didn't take long for me to realize that his boundary breaking wasn't just limited to the office. It bled straight into our marriage. Whenever Ross and I went on a date, Sophie would magically find an emergency that required his immediate attention. And Ross, a man who brutally guarded his private time, would always cave because it was her. The final explosion happened on the opening night of my private gallery exhibition. Half an hour into the event, Ross, who had sworn to stay by my side the entire day, got a phone call. Sophie was on the other end, crying that she felt violently ill and needed him to drive her to urgent care. Swallowing my mounting fury, I took the phone and told her Ross was hosting an important exhibition with me. Sophie scoffed, her voice dripping with pure disdain. "Your exhibition? Let's be real, Fiona. The only reason anyone is there is because of Ross's money and connections. We might not say it out loud, but you need to know your place. Without him, who would ever buy your amateur paintings? It really doesn't matter if he stays there or not." I was shaking with rage. My artwork had always sold well, even back when I was a struggling student. Hearing her casually invalidate my entire life's work made me snap. I yelled right into the receiver. "You literally begged Ross for a desk job because you couldn't get hired anywhere else. Where do you get the nerve to speak to me like that?" "Enough, Fiona," Ross barked, snatching the phone away. "She's just a young girl. Why are you being so vicious over nothing? Her parents are vacationing in Europe. She's home alone and she's sick and scared. I'm going to check on her." "Ross." I called his name, my voice colder than it had ever been in my life. "If you walk out that door to go see her, we are getting a divorce." He froze. A harsh, bitter laugh scraped the back of his throat as he pressed his tongue against the inside of his cheek. "Are you threatening me? Wow, Fiona, you've really outdone yourself this time. Fine. You want a divorce? You've got it." He turned on his heel and walked out, his face like thunder. I stood frozen in the center of the gallery like a statue, bearing the weight of 100 pitying stares from the city's elite. To this day, I can't remember how I forced myself through the rest of the evening, or how I managed to drive back to an empty, suffocating house. All I remember is the crushing silence of the next 3 days, culminating in an email from Ross's lawyers containing the divorce settlement. Meanwhile, Sophie was having the time of her life on social media. She posted daily updates. One day, it was a picture of Ross applying sunscreen to her shoulders in Miami. The next, it was a selfie of them pressing their cheeks together at a Michelin star restaurant. Every single post was a calculated strike at my breaking point. Maybe it was my own stubborn pride, or maybe I was just desperately hoping he would come to his senses and beg for my forgiveness. Whatever the reason, I called him a few days later, informing him that I had signed the papers and telling him to meet me at the courthouse. A tiny, pathetic part of me still thought he would back down, just like he always used to do when we fought in the early days. Instead, Ross simply answered with a single word. "Okay." On the day we finalized the paperwork, he brought Sophie to the courthouse. He completely ignored the dark circles under my eyes and my hollowed-out cheeks. The second the stamped decree was in his hands, Sophie wrapped herself around his arm, her voice deliberately loud and sultry. Let's head back to my place for the pool party, Ross. I bought a brand new bikini just to celebrate you finally being a free man. She leaned up, her glossy lips brushing against his jawline. I stood there watching them, my fingernails digging so deeply into my palms that they drew blood. I prayed he would pull away. Instead, he locked eyes with me, his gaze dark and unreadable. After a torturous second, he smiled. Sure, let's go. You younger girls know how to have a good time. It's refreshing being around someone with so much energy. Keeps things exciting. Sophie caught his underlying meaning instantly. She shot me a triumphant, venomous smirk and climbed into the passenger seat of his sports car. I don't know the exact details of what happened between them that night, but after tossing and turning until 3 a.m., I saw a video posted by one of Ross's frat brothers. By the edge of a neon-lit pool, Sophie, wearing a microscopic bikini, was leaning her wet body flush against Ross's chest. They were sharing a single glass of champagne, their lips inches apart. In the background of the chaotic party, they leaned closer and closer together. Right before they closed the gap, someone walked in front of the camera, cutting the video off. I knew Ross did it on purpose. He was deliberately flaunting her, purposely letting his friends film it, and making sure the algorithm pushed it directly to my feed. It was his twisted way of punishing me for not trusting him, for daring to utter the word divorce. That was just the beginning of my personal hell. Even though I actively tried to block his digital footprint, updates about him and Sophie constantly bled into my life through mutual acquaintances. I spiraled. I started drinking heavily. I spent my days suspended in an alcoholic haze, dissecting every single argument we ever had, putting myself on trial and desperately trying to find out where I had failed him as a wife. I tormented myself with doubts. Had I misjudged him? Were he and Sophie really just innocent friends, until I pushed him over the edge with my ultimatums? But none of it mattered. I eventually realized that regardless of whether Ross was at fault, I was the only one drowning in the wreckage of our past. He had clearly moved on. After a month of absolute misery, I forced myself to put the bottle down. I returned to my art studio, determined to bury my grief in work. But my nightmare wasn't over. A corporate client I had worked with for 5 years suddenly called to cancel a massive commission. Then a second client pulled out, then a third. I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly whose invisible hand was choking my livelihood. I had never once used Ross's name to secure a contract. Even when we were married, every single gallery showing and commission was earned through my own relentless networking and pure talent. But now, with a few casual phone calls, my exorbitant was systematically incinerating my career. I knew this was his sick way of forcing me to crawl back to him and beg, but I refused to break. To keep my studio afloat, I started aggressively cold calling independent investors. I crashed every single industry cocktail hour and gallery opening in the city, desperately trying to pitch my portfolio. Despite being mocked, ignored, and blacklisted by anyone afraid of crossing Ross, I never stopped pushing. A month later, I finally secured a meeting. A wealthy art investor invited me to a private suite in a downtown luxury hotel to review my portfolio. I dressed impeccably, my heart pounding with the hope that my life was finally getting back on track. But that beautiful dream was shattered the moment the investor locked the door and slid his sweaty hand aggressively up my thigh. Pure survival instinct took over. I grabbed my heavy crystal champagne flute and smashed it directly across his face. The glass shattered, and the man roared in pain, tackling me violently to the hardwood floor. Just as I thought it was all over, the heavy mahogany doors of the suite were kicked open with a deafening crash. Ross stood in the doorway, a lit cigarette clamped between his teeth. He casually grabbed the bleeding investor by the collar and hurled him across the room like a rag doll. His eyes were completely devoid of warmth. Unless you want your entire firm liquidated by tomorrow morning, get out of my sight. The man scrambled out of the room, leaving me alone with my ex-husband. Ross crouched down in front of me with the slow, arrogant grace of a predator. He reached out, his thumb and forefinger tilting my chin up to force me to look at him. Fiona. His tone was suffocatingly superior. Beneath the coldness, I could hear a dark, twisted sense of triumph. Ross's thumb brushed over the bruise already forming along my jaw. Fiona. His tone was infuriatingly calm. You've gotten reckless. I slapped his hand away. And you've gotten controlling. For a moment, neither of us moved. The luxury suite felt suffocating. Ross stared at me, taking in my disheveled hair, the torn sleeve of my blouse, the shards of crystal scattered across the floor. Then his gaze darkened. Do you have any idea what would have happened if I hadn't shown up? I laughed. A harsh, ugly sound. No. Tell me, Ross. What would have happened? His jaw tightened. I took a step forward. Maybe I would have learned the same lesson you spent the last year teaching me. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? That nobody is coming to save me. The words hit harder than I intended. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Pain. Real pain. But it vanished almost immediately. Instead, he grabbed my wrist. I've been trying to save you for months. I stared at him. Then I started laughing again. This time I couldn't stop. The sound echoed through the suite. Ross's expression slowly froze. You destroyed my career. I protected you. You blacklisted me. I prevented people from taking advantage of you. You ruined every opportunity one had. I was making sure you came home. The laughter died instantly. The room went silent. Ross seemed to realize what he'd admitted. Too late. I looked at him as if I were seeing him for the first time. You really believe that? His grip loosened. Fiona. You genuinely think destroying my life was an act of love? For the first time in years, Ross had no response. I pulled my wrist free. His hand hung uselessly in the air. When did you become like this? The question seemed to hit a nerve. His expression cracked. When you left? No. I shook my head. I left because you were already like this. His face went pale. I continued. You chose her over me. Silence. You humiliated me. Silence. You flaunted her in my face. Silence. You let everyone think I was a jealous, insecure wife. Silence. And when I finally walked away, my voice became dangerously quiet. You punished me. Ross looked away. That tiny movement told me everything. Because he couldn't deny it. After a long moment he spoke. I wanted you to come back. I smiled. A cold smile. Congratulations. His eyes snapped back to mine. I came back. For a second, hope appeared in his face. Then I continued. And now I know exactly who you are. The hope died. Completely. The suite felt colder. Ross stared at me for a very long time. Finally he asked quietly, Are you going to leave again? I thought about it. About the divorce. About the humiliation. About the endless nights spent wondering why I wasn't enough. About Sophie. About every opportunity he had stolen from me. Then I smiled. Softly. Not yet. Something dangerous flashed through his eyes. Not relief. Not happiness. Possession. The same look a collector gave a priceless painting. The same look a man gave something he thought already belonged to him. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. Ross wasn't remorseful. He wasn't trying to fix the marriage. He wasn't even trying to earn forgiveness. He simply believed that now that I had returned, eventually I would love him again. That I would forget. That I would forgive. That I would stay. Just like before. The realization almost made me pity him. Almost. Because Ross had no idea what I had spent the last year doing. No idea why I had suddenly agreed to remarry him. No idea why I stopped arguing. Stopped crying. Stopped caring. He thought my obedience meant surrender. In reality, it meant I was finished loving him. And people are most dangerous when they no longer have anything left to lose. That night, after returning to the mansion, I opened the hidden folder on my laptop. Hundreds of files filled the screen. Financial records. Corporate emails. Witness statements. Photos. Audio recordings. Every questionable transaction. Every favor Ross had pulled for Sophie. Every company resource he'd quietly diverted to her. Every executive who had complained about her incompetence. For 6 months, I had been collecting everything. Methodically. Patiently. Like an artist building a masterpiece. A new message appeared on the screen. From a private investigator. Ms. Hayes, we finally got it. Attached was a video file. I clicked play. The footage showed Sophie entering a luxury apartment building at 11:43 p.m. A few minutes later, another man arrived. Not Ross. A younger man. Handsome. Athletic. The two disappeared upstairs together. The timestamp continued. They never came back down until nearly 8 the next morning. I watched the entire thing without blinking. Then I opened the investigator's report. Bank transfers, hotel records, messages, photographs. Enough evidence to destroy Sophie completely. I slowly leaned back in my chair. Outside the study, I could hear Ross moving around the house, waiting for me, believing our marriage was finally healing, believing he had won. A soft knock sounded at the door. Fiona. Ross's voice. Gentle. Careful. Are you still working? I closed the laptop. A small smile appeared on my face. Just finishing something. And for the first time in a very long time, I was. For the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the perfect wife. I ate dinner with Ross. I listened when he talked about work. I accepted every expensive gift he sent. When he came home late, I didn't ask questions. When Sophie called him during our dates, I smiled and told him to answer. The more indifferent I became, the more unsettled Ross grew. At first he seemed pleased, then confused, then increasingly irritated. One evening, he tossed his phone onto the dining table. Aren't you going to ask who called? I glanced up from my soup. Should I? It was Sophie. Oh. Ross stared. Just stared. That's all you have to say? I dabbed my lips with a napkin. What response are you looking for? His jaw clenched. The rest of dinner passed in silence. That same night, my investigator sent another report. The deeper we dug, the uglier things became. Sophie wasn't just flirting with Ross. She had been manipulating him for years. Whenever she needed money, she manufactured emergencies. Whenever Ross spent too much time with me, she suddenly needed help. Whenever another wealthy man showed interest in her, she used Ross's jealousy to her advantage. And while Ross was busy playing protector, she was seeing multiple men behind his back. The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots, videos, bank records, witness statements. Enough to obliterate her carefully crafted innocent image. I saved everything. Then waited. Because revenge was like painting. The timing had to be perfect. The company gala arrived. The biggest event of the year. Politicians, executives, investors, media. Everyone important would be there. Ross personally delivered my gown that afternoon. A stunning custom-made silver dress worth more than most people's annual salary. He stood in my doorway watching me examine it. You'll wear it tonight? I smiled. Of course. For some reason, relief crossed his face. When we arrived at the gala that evening, hundreds of cameras flashed. The crowd parted immediately. Ross placed a possessive hand on my lower back. For the first time since our remarriage, Sophie wasn't attached to his arm. Instead, she was standing across the ballroom in a sparkling red gown. The moment she saw me, her smile faltered. Then she noticed something else. Ross hadn't left my side once. Not all evening. Her expression darkened. Good. Let her wonder. The gala proceeded normally for almost 2 hours. Champagne flowed. Speeches were given. Deals were negotiated. Then the CEO stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude tonight's celebration, we'd like to present a special video highlighting the company's achievements. Perfect. I set my champagne glass down. Because that wasn't the video that was about to play. The giant screen behind the stage flickered. The CEO frowned. Something was wrong. Then the footage began. The ballroom went silent. A hotel security video appeared. Sophie entering a luxury suite. A man followed. Not Ross. Another clip appeared. Then another. Then another. Photos. Messages. Bank transfers. Evidence. An avalanche of evidence. The entire room froze. Someone gasped. Someone else cursed. The CEO's face turned white. Across the ballroom, Sophie looked like she'd been struck by lightning. No. Her voice cracked. No, no, no. The footage kept playing. Every secret. Every lie, every affair, displayed on a screen the size of a house. In front of the most powerful people in the city, the room exploded into whispers. Ross stood perfectly still. His eyes never left the screen. Then slowly, very slowly, he turned toward Sophie. I've never seen a human being look more terrified. Because she finally realized something. Ross wasn't the kind man who spoiled her. He wasn't the patient protector who cleaned up her mistakes. He was the ruthless businessman who destroyed entire companies for crossing him. And she had just humiliated him before an audience of thousands. Ross. Her voice shook. I can't explain. He didn't answer. The look in his eyes was far worse. It was complete absence. No affection. No loyalty. No protection. Nothing. For the first time in years, Ross saw her exactly as she was. The room remained deathly silent. Then Sophie suddenly pointed at me. Her face twisted with hatred. She did this. Every head turned toward me. I calmly lifted my champagne flute, took a sip, and smiled. Did I? The simplicity of the answer made her unravel. You set me up. I tilted my head. No, Sophie. My voice carried clearly across the ballroom. You did all of those things yourself. A murmur spread through the crowd. Her face turned crimson. You bitch. Before she could finish, security appeared beside her. The board members were already moving. Investors were whispering. Executives were checking their phones. Her career was dying in real time. And one could see it. Sophie looked desperately toward Ross. The way drowning people look toward a lifeboat. Ross, please. Nothing. Ross. Nothing. Ross. Finally he spoke. His voice was colder than ice. Get her out. The last bit of color drained from Sophie's face. Security escorted her toward the exit while she screamed and cried. Nobody stopped them. Nobody defended her. Nobody even looked sympathetic. The ballroom watched in silence as she disappeared through the doors. And just like that, Sophie was finished. But the strangest part wasn't her downfall. It was Ross. Because while everyone else watched Sophie leave, Ross was staring at me. Only me. His expression unreadable. As though he had finally realized something. The woman standing before him wasn't the same Fiona who had once cried and begged for his attention. That woman had died a long time ago. And for the first time since our remarriage, Ross looked afraid. The gala ended in chaos. By midnight, every major business group in the city was discussing Sophie's downfall. By sunrise, she had been terminated from the firm. Within a week, several of the wealthy men she had been juggling publicly distanced themselves from her. The social circles she had spent years clawing her way into slammed their doors shut. As for me, I didn't attend any of the aftermath. I slept. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. 3 days later, Ross came home unusually early. I was in my studio painting when he walked in. He stood quietly in the doorway, watching me, just like he used to when we were first dating. Back when everything felt simple. Back when we loved each other more than we loved our pride. Fiona. I didn't stop painting. What is it? The silence stretched. Then he asked the question I knew had been haunting him. Why did you come back? My brush paused. Not because I was surprised. Because I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of performing. Tired of carrying a marriage that had died long ago. I set my brush down. Slowly. Then turned to face him. Do you really want the truth? His expression tightened. Yes. So I gave it to him. I came back because I wanted to stop loving you. The color drained from his face. I continued calmly. After our divorce, I hated you. He flinched. I hated Sophie. Another flinch. I hated myself. His hands clenched. But hatred is exhausting. I looked around the studio. The paintings. The sketches. The life I had rebuilt from ashes. So I came back to see if there was anything left worth saving. Ross wasn't breathing. I could practically see his heart pounding. And the word barely escaped him. I smiled sadly. And now I know. His eyes closed. As if he already knew the answer. There isn't. The room went silent. Completely silent. When he opened his eyes again, they were red. Not with anger. With grief. Real grief. The kind that arrives too late. Fiona. I shook my head. No. His voice cracked. Please. No. For years, I had been the one begging. The one compromising. The one forgiving. The one waiting. Now it was his turn to face reality. You know what the saddest part is? I asked softly. He couldn't answer. I never stopped trusting you because of Sophie. His eyes widened. I stopped trusting you because every time she hurt me, you chose her comfort over my pain. Tears finally gathered in his eyes. I know. I wasn't competing with another woman. A tear slid down his cheek. I know. I was competing with your ego. Another tear followed. Because he knew it was true. Every cruel thing. Every punishment. Every humiliation. It had all started because he couldn't tolerate being questioned. Couldn't tolerate being doubted. Couldn't tolerate being told no. By the time he understood that, he had already destroyed the thing he loved most. The divorce papers were finalized 6 weeks later. This time there were no arguments. No threats. No dramatic confrontations. Just signatures. Ink on paper. The quiet ending of a long story. Ross gave me everything I asked for. The house. The studio. Financial compensation. The rights to several investments. I accepted without guilt. Some debts cannot be repaid. But they can be acknowledged. On the day we signed the final documents, we sat across from each other in silence. Just like the first divorce. Only this time Sophie wasn't there. No one was. Just us. At the very end, Ross suddenly spoke. If I had chosen differently. I looked up. His gaze was fixed on the window. If I had stayed at your exhibition that night. His voice was rough. Would we have made it? For a moment I thought about answering. About giving him hope. Or closure. Or comfort. Instead, I told him the truth. We already had years before that night to make it work. His shoulders slumped. Because he understood. The exhibition hadn't destroyed our marriage. It had only revealed that it was already broken. Ross signed the final page. Then pushed the documents forward. His hand trembled slightly. I signed mine. And that was that. 8 years together. Reduced to a stack of paper. A year later, my newest exhibition sold out completely. Every piece. Before opening night was even over. Reporters crowded the gallery. Collectors lined up. Investors competed for future commissions. Everything I had lost came back. And more. As I stood among my paintings, a young journalist asked me a question. Ms. Hayes, what's the inspiration behind your newest collection? I looked around the room. At the vibrant colors. The sunlight. The life in every canvas. Then I smiled. Freedom. The answer made her laugh. But I meant it. Completely. Later that evening, after the gallery emptied, I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The skyline glittered beneath. The stars. My phone buzzed. A message. From Ross. The first one in months. It contained only a single photograph. An old picture from our 20s. We were standing in front of a tiny apartment. Broke. Happy. Hopelessly in love. Below it was one sentence. I'm sorry. I stared at the message for a long time. Long enough to remember the good times. The first dates. The shared dreams. The years before resentment poisoned everything. Then I smiled. Not sadly. Not bitterly. Just peacefully. And I deleted the message. Before slipping the phone back into my purse. The wind carried the scent of fresh paint from the gallery behind me. A new exhibition. A new life. A new future. Some love stories end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. Mine ended with something far more valuable. I finally chose myself. And as I walked back into the bright lights of the gallery, I never looked back.